Welcome to episode 3 of the Masters Unite, the Saturday show where we take a deep dive into history, different religions, cultures, races. Today we're joined by Lady Medea, who is Polish, and she'll be sharing some of her Polish ancestry with us. And I don't know if at the beginning was just cut off because it said we just went live now. So I'm going to restart that. Hey everyone, welcome to Masters Unite 3, the Saturday show where we take a deep dive into history. We're joined tonight by Lady Medea, who is Polish, and she's going to be giving us a deep dive into her Polish history, ancestry, and how that compares with your Pop's Korean ancestry and Maltese, Indian, and Master's legacy blood and such. So, Lady Medea, take it away. From as far back as you remember, where does your family originate from?
Hi everyone. It's also to join you guys, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
So, like Kaylin said, I'm Polish. My entire family is Polish. I don't know my family history past 1900s, early 1900s. So basically, like my great grandparents and my grandparents. So what I wanted to talk about today is my probably my grandfathers. Both of them actually were active during World War II. So my grandpa on my mom's side, he was 25, I believe, when the World War II started in 1939, and so just kind of go back a little bit to give you a context. So the World War II started on September 1st, 1939, with the German invasion from the Baltic Sea. They attacked the Polish city of Gdańsk, and they easily took it over. Then the Russians came from the east in like 2 weeks later, I think, September 17th, if I'm not mistaken, and they just finished what the Germans started. There was not too much opposition because Polish army, Polish military at that time was just not, it was underdeveloped. We just recently regained our independence. Poland was totally erased from the maps of Europe for 123 years. So I think they got back in like 1918 after World War II. One. So like close to 20 years, they, like I said, they were not able to build a large military. So they surrendered. There was nobody to fight. With that being said, the Polish people kind of decided that they're gonna form their own opposition groups, kind of like underground formations, and just take over. And they would report to the Polish government. So they were kind of legit. They would report to the Polish government, who was at that time they were sent to London. So they were in England, but they kind of would still give them their blessing, to fight for their country. So, like I said, my grandfather on my mom's side, he was 25 at that time, and he was just taken from the street. That's what happened. If you were outside, you walked around, at the wrong time. The military came and they kind of did the sweep and they grabbed people. So he was put on a train to go to Germany for work. So not to the actual work camp, but just to work for Germans. But he happened to escape at some point and join the AK, which was one of the opposition groups, and he fought for Poland with them, and he actually survived the war. He went home afterwards. He got married. My uncle was born, and I think my mom told me it was about 8 years later that he just left for work one day and never came back. Like my grandma didn't know what happened. She had to, ask friends of friends of friends to find out, and comes to find out that he was actually arrested for being part of that group by the Polish government at that time, and he was sentenced to death. He was put on a death row along with thousands and thousands of other people who, they discovered that were part of the opposition group. And some of them unfortunately didn't make it. They were killed, but he survived that as well. He came out a couple years later, and yeah, and was able to join his family. And then my mom was born. So yeah, but I think he died young. He died like it's I think he was 60 of the heart attack, but because what he endured in that prison, kind of, like mom said, that even looking the pictures from before and after, he was just the shadow of himself. He went through tuberculosis. He was so emancipated that he spent like months in a hospital afterwards. So it was, yeah, his life was ruined by that, even though, he survived, and he came out of there, and was able to live his life. um it wasn't the same. So yeah, so that's the
And
story.
down upward says, trains to Germany, bad way to start your day. And I feel like that's something a lot of people kind of neglect or don't consider is how fortunate we are in America, how fortunate we have been. Even like 100 years ago, that was never something that happened in America, where if you were out at the wrong time, you'd just be drafted and just taken to like a work camp or taken off. But that's very much something that has been going on in Europe for a long time, and something that I believe still is happening in certain European countries, where if you're out past curfew, if you're out just wrong place, wrong time, you can just be taken away on a train, sent to a work camp, or worse, or drafted into like some faction of the military. And it's just important, I believe, to have that awareness of the very how we are pretty fortunate, in America. And I feel like we take advantage of that with all these protesters and people out there going, oh, America, we're so bad. We need to be supporting this and sending money here and getting rights for these people. But it's like we've got it pretty good, especially in comparison to seems like what your family's gone through.
Yeah, the, I mean, definitely. I feel like that old generation, I mean, the young people these days, they have no clue what it was like to live, like 70 or 80 years back. um and how tough it was for some of those people, especially in the wartime.
They have no idea what a full work day is and no idea what
Mhm.
actual struggle means because they're stuck to their phones all day. Now, granted, we do this as well, where we're stuck to our phones or to a screen for a lot of
Mhm.
portions of our day, but most of us also have full-time jobs on the side where we make our actual money, and we're just doing this kind of for fun, and but also treating it importantly. And a lot of the young people today don't treat anything importantly other than their own feelings.
Exactly. Especially like, people, you guys, I'm 18. 50% of my friends, people I know who are 18, don't have jobs. Which is like I
Wow.
can say confidently 50% of the people I know. Like if I've got like let's say 40 superficial surface level friendships, 20 of them don't have jobs. And it's just someone that, I've been working since I was 14. Not, full time till like, 2 years ago. Um, but it is just something that I feel like America is almost not behind on, but different with, where I feel like everything is a bit easier here, which is fortunate that we do have these liberties and freedoms and stuff. But it's important, I feel, to have that contrast and to know, like, hey, it's not so easy in other countries. And history is something that's very important to, look at and to look at the future. Where do we want America to be in 5, 10 years, and what kind of people are being raised, today and how are they being influenced?
Yeah. So that brings me to my other grandpa, who was only 13 when the war started, and He also was taken from the street, and he actually made it to Germany. He was put in a with a family who had a farm, so he had to work for them. He tend to animals and took care of the farm business. And they actually did not treat him that bad. They had children, and they kind of, when time permitted, they played together. So but when he escaped, because at some point he just ended up escaping, he wanted to go home. It didn't matter how well they treated him, he just wanted to make it back home. But I think he joined a group of other young people, and that was a couple years later, so I think he might have been like 15 at that time. Some of the things he told me, because just go back to my other grandpa, I never knew him. He died when my mom was only 17. So I couldn't, I didn't hear those stories. It was all kind of passed down from my grandmother and my uncles and my mom. So that's how I know all that. Plus there were some documents from it too. But my grandpa on my dad's side, he was actually, he was alive, he was in my life. So he was able to tell me some of these horrendous stories from his way back home. They would, of course, they were on a run, so they had to be very careful not to be caught. I think he also mentioned that one time he was trying to escape and he did get caught. And I don't know the punishment that he, I didn't ask for details, but I know that it was, not good. But the final time when he escaped, he joined a group of other young guys, and they were making their way back to Poland. And like when you mentioned that, the kids these days, I mean, I'm pretty sure if you put some of the 13-year-olds or 14, 15-year-olds in their shoes and tell them, okay, you have to make it home, hundreds and hundreds of miles, and you have to survive, and the elements or the soldiers hunting you, or just the risk of being caught. I don't think anybody would make it. But like they had no choice, of course. So he told me like that they had no food, they had to look for it. The one time they found a big jar of honey that was just thrown away, and when they opened it, they found that there was a rat in there that kind of drawn in the honey. So they just pulled it out, scraped the honey off it, and then just still had the honey because they were so hungry and there was no other food. And of course, moving more towards east, they came across like burned villages, and one in particular I remember because I was a young girl, so it kind of stuck in my memory when he told me, was that they came upon the village that was, I believe, burned down by Russian soldiers. There was no people, though. They couldn't find them until they actually walked to like a wooded area, kind of field or meadow, and they noticed that there is a ground that was moving, literally just kind of I don't know how to explain it, just kind of moving, pulsating, and they realized that all those people were buried there, and their body gases were making it move. And wow. And the Russians, I mean, say what you want about Germans, they follow the rules. So the women, the children, they were they were not their enemies. They would not care. They would not do anything. The Russians were savages. The Russians, there was nobody safe from them. He told me, and I don't know if he witnessed that. Actually, he might have heard about it, and I can't say if it's true. He said that they used to take children, like babies from the moms, throw them in the air and shoot them like pigeons. It.
Yeah, I've heard I've heard like just like historical accounts too that
Mhm.
the Nazis were they at least like Hitler made sure that a lot most of the soldiers would follow like the Geneva Conventions and like the rules and stuff like that. Yeah, I think
Correct.
the Geneva Conventions they followed the rules for the most part, but yeah, the Russians were pretty brutal in what they did, and if you got captured, you're better off getting captured by the Nazis than the Russians. Yeah, that's I heard about that too.
Yes.
Yeah, no quarter.
Yeah. So they would they would not, like, when if the Nazis capture you, they would take you to the camps. They would, imprison you, but it wouldn't be like massacres. The entire villages just killed and burned. So, and of course, it was no fun going to the concentration camps. Um, but it was a place that, they probably not alive anymore. But growing up, I would hear that um, people who were able to survive it, to recall it, they say, if you work hard, if you do what they tell you, if you don't try to, break the rules or escape, um, there was a chance that you would actually survive the concentration camp.
Well, oh, yeah. So one thing I wanted to bring up about that was it almost parallels how the slave traders down in the early South. So like the concentration camps, they needed that labor, and it was free labor
Mhm.
to fuel the war machine that they had going on. So yeah, they would treat you like crap, but they would keep you alive because they needed you to produce things for them. Now,
Correct.
if you know anything, I would like to hear more about the ones where they were just trained off strictly to take a bath and never come out the other side.
Well, the most famous one is Auschwitz, and I've been to that one just as a visitor, and neither of my grandparents, um, were actually sent to one. But um, in Poland, when you're a little older, maybe like in a high school, they don't take the little kids there. It's just too much. But when you're in high school, you can take a trip. You usually go with your school. I ended up going in my 20s just on my own, and just the feeling of heaviness, and it was just a grim experience. It, like you just feel it. It just kind of gets to you, especially looking at the tracks, because the original tracks where the trains rolled in are still there. Looking at the gas chambers, you can actually go in there. You can go inside, and it's just mind-boggling to, like, I cannot imagine what those people went through. You see the barracks where they lived, and I think the most depressing, aside from the gas chambers, is like a museum that they come up with. And what they have the mounds of personal belongings. So like you have a big mound of suitcases, then you have the shoes, then you have the canes, things that people took with them, thinking, okay, we're going to be okay, we're going to pack our belongings, we're going to make our living there, and we're going to be okay. But those are all the ones that were, taken straight to the gas chambers. And there is a little section with the children's toys and clothing, and it's just, I mean, it brings tears to your eyes. You just, it's unbelievable to see it. Very, 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 very devastating.
Yeah, it's difficult to see how they really just want to, at the end of their lives, at the end of the lives that they took from them,
Hmm.
they still wanted to keep even the smallest things, but didn't use it for anything because there's still a pile of shoes. There's still a
No,
pile of garments. It's like, oh, you didn't repurpose that. But what you did want to do is take care of that because that was one less dissident.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting to me.
Yeah.
And it's really, put that in perspective, like the things that people are so passionate about, like nowadays in America, that are just meaningless in comparison, to stuff like that. And I feel like that stuff isn't taught at all as much as it should be. History was very much so glossed over from my, high school experience. It's something that I personally went into and looked into more because I chose to, not something that was, taught because history isn't taught as much as it should be, at least not in Delaware. Um, but again, it's so important to have that reminder of stuff that's actually happening, that shocking stuff that could, happen again if we're not careful and if we don't, make the right choices and actually choose which battles we want to fight instead of just going all out over these silly little issues that just aren't even real things.
Yeah. Real history is brutal and bloody and unforgiving. And we're over here bitching about we don't
Pronouns.
have headphone jacks in our iPhones nowadays. And
Yeah.
Well, it's not
it's
just history. Well, I mean, I guess history is, the story of it, but it really kind of goes down to human nature. I think ever since humans have gotten, let's just say, civilized, for lack of better words, I think we really do forget brutality and like, well, I'd say evil is kind of the norm, and what we experience on our daily lives as far as right now is actually not the norm across everywhere else or even back in, back in history. I think we've really forgotten that.
exactly.
Yep.
So when did your parents, or grandparents, when did they immigrate over here? Was it after they were freed?
No, my grandparents never came here. Well, they came to visit me. I'm the first one who came here.
Okay. You're
Yeah.
first generation.
I'm first
Alien.
generation. I was 21 and I came by myself as au pair or like living nanny, stayed with the family. Yeah, it was a good experience. And I just ended up staying here.
Legally.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. You're good in my book. That's all.
Westwood Swell says, hard to say hi with topics like these, but we need to remind ourselves what humanity is capable of. Yeah, because if people don't talk about this, if history, isn't taught, then we forget, and then when we forget about stuff happens again because we don't act to prevent history from repeating.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then we talk about World War III, possibly happening, or it could very well, and I cannot imagine going through what my ancestors went through. And it would be extremely devastating with technology and the military being so much more advanced.
And temperaments now, I feel like people, at least, World War I and World War II had more of a grasp on reality, I feel like, than our current, leaders, especially in America. I feel like they have less control over their tempers and stuff would go wrong really fast.
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like everyone.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
who was
Go ahead.
going? Yeah,
Go
anyone.
ahead, Walter.
Now that we have nuclear weapons, and that's like pretty much a mass-produced thing across a bunch of different countries, everyone kind of has it like a dick showing contest. I mean, you see Kim Jong-un firing test missiles towards the Americas from North Vietnam or North Korea. Sorry, but you see that kind of crap all the time, and Russia has a whole bunch of stocks of plutonium and everything. We all know who has the nuclear bombs. And everyone's just in this giant dick showing contest, and whoever like trips the tripwire first, everyone's just going to shoot them at each other. Whatever satellites can shoot them down, it's like, okay, well, that'll save that little portion, but that's going to be World War III if there is one. Hopefully Jesus comes first, but it's just going to be complete annihilation of all civilization.
Oh yeah, and very quick one too.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, I think we forget that there are actual death camps and stuff. If you look at China, they have the Uyghurs that they arrest, and then they harvest their organs and things like that, and then any political dissidents, they put them into labor camps and stuff. And I think, and this kind of goes back to the whole technology thing. I think that it's gone to a point, as far as, let's say, China goes, where 90% of the population, if you ask them about, they won't even know that it exists, right? And the Chinese have made it to where it's so efficient the way that they do it. And and I think I don't know, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong here, Lady Medea, but I would assume that people back then in World War II, like just the regular population, really had no idea what was going on. Maybe not for Poland, but like as far as maybe the citizens like Germany, let's say, I think they really didn't know what was going on. I think they just, because the propaganda that was put out and things like that. And I believe what it was until like after the war happened that the U.S. soldiers actually took a local population at, I forget which camp it was that they liberated, but they made them walk through all that, and they had really no idea that this was happening. And I think it's happening now in China. And if you keep up with like politics and things like that, it's going on, but a lot of people don't know that it's actually still going on to this day.
Absolutely. Regular people, whether Polish, Germans, or even Jews, they had no idea what was going on. I feel like they were collateral damage to all the soldiers, military fighting. And if you think about that Poland was it still is located right in the middle between Germany and Russia. It was just a battleground for them. Like those Polish people had, they were just they had no clue what was going on. It wasn't their war, really.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and then the good example is all those people, packing their belongings. And if you look at the old footage, the videos that were taken, with the old-fashioned cameras, they were happy. They were, they were just, they were not concerned. They went to the train station. You can see them, saying goodbye to their loved ones, but not really knowing what's going to happen to them, what's awaiting them. They thought they were just being taken somewhere else, that to live somewhere else, and that they packed everything that was dear to them and took it with them, and didn't get far.
Well, I mean, that kind of happened. Sorry, that kind of happened with the whole COVID thing in China. I know Australia, and I'm not saying it's the same equivalency. It's obviously not. But like in China, when they started locking people down over there, and they started taking people to the medical centers, right, the quarantine centers and stuff. The people just, they just went and just blindly followed, because they're like, okay, I just got to go for 2 weeks, and once my tests are negative, then I'll be back out. But I think there's still people like to this day still locked down in those centers, and they're actually cordoning off a lot of like city centers too to this day. But it's not to the way that it was back then, so it's not the same equivalency, but they've, and it kind of goes back to the whole technology thing too. They did it in such a way where it's not as overt, it's not as obvious, but yeah, I mean, like, just people just willingly going, just not knowing what was going to happen. But yeah, I sorry, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of synonymous. You find a lot of things. I watched a Wendigo video about what the Japanese were doing, not only with POWs, with their own people and people they captured from China, during World War II, and they just did human experiments on them. And it's basically like offering money for beta testing. And so people would willingly go there, and once they got there, they were stripped of their humanity, tested on, ended up like mass suicide or mass genocide.
Mm.
I guess technically genocide is not the word, because obviously you didn't kill all the Chinese people, but just mass murdering of these people while they were testing their own biological experiments on them. And people walked in freely because they thought that they were doing something for the greater good. They thought that, that they were promised something that they thought might be beneficial for them. Same thing with Poland and Warsaw and everything like that. They hopped on those trains willingly, thinking they could get out from a war-torn, ravaged area. What they didn't know, and they were sold a bill of goods, that they're actually, oh no, you're being taken to death camps and concentration camps.
Yeah.
I got two things to say about that. So if you talk about the Japanese experiments, the medical experiments, the interesting thing is that a lot of our medical science that we know now, that we've learned, we've actually, the only reason why we know a lot of things about like the body and all these medical things is because of those experiments that the Japanese did, like, believe it or not. And then to the second point you were saying was uh the whole like relocation thing, it was sold as for your own good. It was for their safety. You got to remember that too. The Nazis said it was, it's for your safety. We have to make sure we put you in these ghettos so you don't get attacked. Oh, we need to take you to these camps to keep you safe. And a lot of the stuff that happens like this is always under the guise of for your safety, for your own good. And that's the most, messed up part of it, I think.
Yes, it's always sold with the quote unquote good intention.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why I said sold a bill of goods to them all,
Yeah.
like made them think that it was all for the better, when in reality they had underlying motives that were completely nefarious.
Right. It was it was all part of Hitler's greater plan of to rid of the Earth of the subhumans. That's what he called them. So
The Jewish problem, I believe he
Yeah.
called it.
mm,
Yeah.
It wasn't just the Jews he hated.
No, yeah. But I
It
mean,
was a lot
that's
more.
like yeah, right. Obviously. Yeah.
yeah.
Westwood said humanity just can't help itself. Multi, I think you guys had the same thought around the same time. It's just like we always,
Yeah,
I feel like we always
Westwood.
create conflict.
Yeah.
Sometimes we create, major conflict, and sometimes it's, smaller, minor conflicts. But it's just something we're very, prone to, and it's something that needs to be, recognized, for sure.
Yeah.
Also,
Westwood
Westwood, I appreciated
smiles.
about,
Yeah.
the corner. Yeah, I'm quite fond of it too.
He's right about that. Humanity is, like I said earlier, it's human nature. We kind of lost sight of that. We forgot about that because we're so comfortable in this society, that we orderly society we live in. But humans are capable of really great things. Humans could build to the stars, but at the same time, we can destroy, we can kill in en masse. So we just can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, the reason I said inhumanity can't help itself is because in my opinions and my views, humanity is us working together to build, like you said, you pops. Inhumanity is when we only care about ourselves and what we can take over. Only by ourselves, not as a populace. And then that's also that greed and lust for power is what and actually ends up with us destroying things, destroying other people's lives, taking their humanity away from them, which is exactly what happened in the concentration camps, stripping all those people, whether they be Polish Jews or German Jews and other people that they didn't like, people that weren't of the Aryan race, and stripping them of their dignity and humanity.
Yeah.
And it was all for power and lust.
Yeah. and to clean the human race.
Yeah, trying to Lysol the human race.
Hmm.
Well, you know
Yeah.
We've
what they
So
obviously been
say.
over some very. Oh, you go ahead. Your pops.
Oh, well, you know what they say. You know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So
Yep. And we're not going to get
We've
political about this, but I could segue into that, but I'm not
we've
going
definitely been
to.
over some of the harsher sides of history. So as we move towards like wrapping up tonight's stream, are there any positives, Lady Medea, with your any what's Poland's what's the best food in Poland? What's Poland known for, food wise?
pierogies, of course.
Pierogies.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, pierogies are the Polish things.
The
What would you say
potato
your favorite
empanadas.
thing about the transitioning process, from Poland to America was? Was there something you missed about Poland or something that you really like enjoyed about America?
Well, when I left Poland, Poland is came a long way now. Since we joined the European Union, there's a lot of improvements. It basically kind of we leveled up with all the um, kind of well-developed countries. But when I left, there was a lot of kind of
Bad
different.
timing.
What? Yeah. So
Someone's machine gun sound effect just went off as you said, leveled up.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So it was good to come here and kind of experience, the American dream and living and yeah, and I was probably very, kind of starstruck by that, if I
Hmm.
can say that. But not, then going back visiting home, over the years, there was there's no difference anymore. I can tell that things are very similar now. But one thing I wanted to kind of add on a kind of nice note. So in the 90s, when I was a teenager, Germany decided to kind of pay all those war prisoners some kind of okay, sorry, that's my dog. um what would you call it, like
reparations.
yeah, they would get money for what they've gone through, and in order to do it, my grandpa had to actually find a family that he worked for, and he did. The daughter that was about his age when he worked there, maybe a little younger, she was still alive, and she was very receptive to it, and they started corresponding, send the letters back and forth. She was able to come up with the documents, and my grandfather ended up being eligible for some money from German
Reimbursement.
government for what he went, yeah, from what he went through, and they actually remained friends. I ended up going to visit them in Germany and spending like 2 weeks with her and her husband, and they showed me around, and they were very nice. So yeah, it was nice. It was good experience.
That's very good. We need to
Yeah.
get something like that with, Malti. Figure out who Tom's descendant was. Um, and get a positive reunion connection with Malti going. Who knows?
Hey,
Maybe it's Vagabundo. We'll see.
yeah, maybe I've already met him. He already gave me the end card.
All right. So, for conclusions, wrapping things up here, Malti, what are your thoughts on history and just where we were 100 years ago, maybe just compared to now, and what you think the future might be with, history repeating?
I think we're, as far as the social structure of where we're doing things right now, I think we're dooming ourselves to repeat it again. We were in a way worse place 100 years ago. We're in a way better place, and it seems like people are fighting tooth and nail to take us back to that place. You see the regression where now people are wanting segregation between the races again. I was like, well, that's taking steps back, but they're reeing so hard to change course of history because they don't know history. They haven't learned. They haven't actually talked to people. They've just been in their echo chambers. And I would rather just come together. Let's all come meet at the table, break bread, and discuss what happened and how we can further better things instead of singling other people out. So that's where I come from.
I agree. Does anyone else have anything to add before we move on to outros?
I think I feel like I keep on saying this, but I think we have to realize that um, we the way that we are now is pretty much artificial. Um, you know, our what's the word I'm looking for here? Our, I guess, like our animal side, for lack of a better word, has been tamped down, and we can't forget that humans do have the ability to enact a lot of evil, a lot of destruction, but at the same time, we have to realize that we can also do a lot of good as well. And just like Multi said, you know, we have to remember history. And I'll say this, you know, they always, you know, like they always say that history repeats itself, but I think that history doesn't really repeat itself. It's just it comes in a different form as the cycle goes, right? Um, it's not going to be an outright the same thing happening, but there'll be a lot of similarities to what used to happen. And yeah, if we forget about that, then um, we are doomed to repeat it. That's for sure.
All right, this has been episode or part 3 of Masters Unite. Thinking we might do a rebrand if we continue with this, weekly history stream. Definitely let us know in chat and in the comments of the video if you want us to do an episode 4 and continue with this being a weekly thing every Saturday with history. I'll have some more people on to talk about their history. Obviously, we had Lady Medea on today. But before we head out, Multi, do you have anything you want to shout out or mention?
Oh, we're just building this brand, man. Doing everything we can, and nose to the grindstone. Let's make it happen, guys.
All right, Lady Medea.
I just wanted to say thank you for having me and letting me, share my history, my family's history. I haven't really talked to anybody about it, so it's nice that I can get off my chest, especially those gruesome stories that my grandpa told me. So, yeah, thank you again. And you guys can follow me on Twitter or X. I have all 10 followers, so that's great. I'm new to it. At Lady Medea 79.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely, of course. Happy to have you on to talk about this stuff. Yo, Pops.
Always love joining in on these history streams. Thank you, Lady Medea, for sharing your history and your the story of your family. I'm sure it it could be hard to talk about things like that. So yeah, thank you.
And thank you guys. Thank you, chat, for tuning in. Westwood, sorry, Smile, Down Upwards, Phantom X. Love you guys. And yeah. Subscribe to the 199 podcast if you haven't already. Go check out my books if you want some fantasy books to read. And then this Thursday we have, of course, episode 6 of the 199 podcast, and we have Prime Animations as our guest. He creates Transformers animations that are pretty cool. So that's gonna be a fun time. 8 p.m. Eastern, and me and ABF will probably do another Helldivers gaming stream before then at some point. But it was great, talking about this stuff. It's obviously a rough subject to discuss, but it's very important, to discuss. And so remember that stuff like this has happened and how we can consider it, to prevent history from repeating and such. But hail, guys, hail, chat, and good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, guys.